Hello again, friends. Today we're here to speak about two new cards, Dragon Zwei and Great Demonic Demise Dragon Azidahaka. We'll start with Dragon Zwei. Let's read the card. Dragon Zwei. Flag. You may use monsters with dragon in its attribute. Your initial hand becomes 4 cards, your initial gauge becomes 2 cards, and your initial life becomes 20. With the information that we've received so far, Dragon Zwei doesn't have too much going for it currently. While the obscene life total is a bit crazy, it's essentially functioning as 3 to 4 attack nullifiers, compensating for the poor starting hand size and the more or less complete lack of spells, especially since you can't use generic cards with this deck. That being said, we have 3 cards left in the secret pack, so there's no telling what other tools this deck is going to get. I'm anticipating some way to toolbox the new Azidahaka out of the deck. Time will tell. Now, if the Dragon Ein engine were to be run, you'd turbo very quickly into the cards that you need, only the Dragon Ein engine can't really be run with this deck. Zaok searches for a card named Demonic Demise Dragon Azidahaka, or Dragon Throne. Zwei doesn't have either of these cards. Cagliostro requires a Dragon Ein flag to draw a card. Tragos can't grab any valid target since the deck has no set spells or size 4s. You lose Dragon Emperor Legend and Divine Dragon Creation because you can't run spells. The only intact card advantage generator that the deck still has access to from its base form is Dragon Knight Pizarro. You also lose out on your Cultic Wanefs and your other Azidahaka forms. This has caused a lot of critical review of the flag already. However, I don't think it's fair to judge this flag too negatively because honestly, if you looked at Dragon Ein and the Azidahaka support before we saw Zaok, it was trash. And we got Zaok and then all of a sudden it was good. So time will tell for this. The long and short is that this will be a very, very different deck from the standard Suicide Ozzy and Ozzy Turbo decks that we've seen lately. Fortunately, there are still other options that haven't been used in Dragon Ein that will work just fine in Dragon Zwei. Ein didn't run them due to some of these cards toolboxing instead of drawing, size restrictions being an issue, and other consistency ordeals revolved around needing a specific board setup that Zwei is not restricted to, turboing out Ozzy, other problems like that. These options can now be played instead, granting a fairly strong mitigation to the advantage deficit you may otherwise be having with that 4-card starting hand. Dragon Chief Emperors and Wild Dragons are both looking to be pretty viable options for the base of the deck while you're waiting for Azidahaka. Dragon Chief Emperors have amazing wall cards like Oriental Joe, which is completely immune to penetrate and gives you a gauge back each time he's destroyed, making him an excellent card to sit on while you wait to draw into your key cards. Wild Dragons have on-discard effects that will be useful for the new Azidahaka, along with other creatures that can discard to make better use of those types of effects, similar to a discard Legend World deck, but more like an Omnidie deck. Additionally, Ancient World also has access to many monsters with effects that trigger when you discard, such as Ice Dragon Emperor Glaucius, who can nullify an attack by paying 1 life. There is plenty of good stuff here to utilize. For non-Ancient World support, there are plenty of gems. Of course, Dragon Knight Pizarro's ability to draw, then be sacrificed for the new Azidahaka is pretty good. Origin Fighting Demon Godel is actually very insanely good. It can fish for itself or any other Demon Godel, and if you use it to go into Demon Godel Arc, your 20 base life plus Demon Godel Arc is going to make your deck insanely tanky. Rescue Dragon Leader Immortal Spirit can apply pressure and board control and help you dig for what you need. Star Dragon World has quite a few combinations of tanky monsters and dragon arms to give you a little bit of extra wall power until you make it to the cards that you need. I definitely recommend Jackknife Full Burst. I think that's going to be a very good card in this deck. Blue Sky Knights can make you take a long time to kill, and Blue Sky Knight Systemic Dagger Dragon can draw off of you gaining life off of your other Blue Sky Knights, which can help you dig for what you need. There are many combos and individually strong cards that can assist this particular deck that the current Dragon Ein build is not running because they have spells to do that for them. Finally, let's talk about the spells, items, and impacts that this deck can run. Wait, what? Tim, it says monsters. You're right, it does. Fortunately, there's a spell, item, and impact that don't really care what your flag says. These are Emblem of the Omnilords, 9th Omnibrave Lord Mukuro, and Unparalleled Arts Omnilord Infinite Burst. While Infinite Burst isn't terribly useful at only 1 of, and requiring a boatload of Omnilords to be effective, Emblem of the Omnilords actually has some practical use. While its primary effect is to search your deck for an Omnilord monster, it can actually be used for its other effect, which is counter, rest a size 2 or less monster on your opponent's field. While it is overcosted at 2 gauge, it is quite literally the only spell you can run, and you can run 4 copies of it. The effect isn't too bad as long as you can manage your resources properly, which shouldn't be too hard hopefully, and it can also fish out Mukuro for you. It also counteracts Sun Dragons completely, inhibits 5th Omnisum, and can give a few other decks some issues, so it's an option on the table. For a whopping $40 a playset, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it, but it's something to keep in mind. As a final note on Dragon Zwei, keep in mind that impact monsters are also monsters, so you are able to run them in Dragon Zwei without any issues. Moving on, we have the new Azidahaka, Great Demonic Demise Dragon Azidahaka. Let's read the card. You may only call this card if your flag is Dragon Zwei. Call cost. Put a card from your field into the drop zone and pay 3 gauge. If this card would leave the field, discard 2 cards and this card remains on the field. Counter, act, if your life is 10 or less, stand this card. You may only use this ability once per turn. Double attack, lifelink 3. The first thing to note is that it is a size 3 instead of a size 4. With Dragon thrown out of the picture, this card is limited to being a size 3 for some pretty obvious reasons. The good part of this is that you pretty much only need this card and a sacrifice in order to bring it out. The bad part is that absolutely none of the previous toolboxing works with this card, and it's hit by size 3 removal and negation, such as Antimatter Cloud, which is already a fairly popular sideboard card. That aside, the idea is that once this hits the board, it should be staying on the board. With on-attack destruction, it has essentially no synergy with spell negation, so I wouldn't anticipate Demonica being used very often in Dragon's Vi decks. That being said, if this card is on the board, due to having an improved version of Omnidie's skill, it should be difficult to remove. Additionally, with 3 attacks normally, and destruction on each of those attacks, this card will melt the standard monster walls. With Wild Dragons having cards with effects when they are discarded, I would wager that those will see some play in this build. I would imagine that Countdown, Mukuro, and Omnidie will be played in here for their synergies with the playstyle of the deck as well. And Mukuro being the only item that you can use at this particular point in time for the deck is going to make it played for that same reason. That does it for this Dragon's Vi initial analysis. Again, with at least 3 support cards left, I am expecting there to be quite a bit more to this deck later. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.